Hey everyone, welcome back to Overtime Insights. In an unprecedented development that has sent shockwaves through college football, Tennessee has parted ways with their starting quarterback Nico Iamaleava, following what appears to be the first high-profile holdout in the name, image, and likeness NIL era. The dismissal came after a 48-hour standoff that culminated in Tennessee head coach Josh Heupel informing the team on Saturday morning that they would be moving forward without their star quarterback. The situation between Nico and Tennessee rapidly deteriorated over a matter of days. Reports indicated that tension had been building for months, with discussions about a revised NIL deal dating back to mid-December. The conflict became public when Nico unexpectedly skipped Tennessee's final spring practice on April 11th, without communicating this absence to the coaching staff. This absence was widely interpreted as a holdout similar to those seen in professional sports, marking a significant milestone in collegiate athletics. Coach Heupel and other staff members attempted to reach Nico and his representatives after he missed practice and meetings, but were unsuccessful. Late Friday night, Nico notified offensive coordinator Joey Halsey that he planned to enter the transfer portal when it opens on Wednesday, April 16th. By Saturday morning, the decision was made. Coach Heupel informed the team that Tennessee would be moving forward without Nico, and the quarterback was removed from the roster ahead of the team's spring game scheduled for that afternoon. So with this original agreement and renegotiation attempts, the conflict centered around Nico's NIL compensation. When originally recruited, Nico reportedly signed a deal worth approximately $8 to $10 million total. Current reports indicate he was making around $2.4 million annually under this arrangement. In the months leading up to the spring game, Nico's representatives sought to renegotiate his contract to approximately $4 million annually, nearly doubled his original annual payment. This renegotiation attempt was reported prompt in part of the NCAA's impending approval of revenue sharing with schools set to begin next season. The two parties met on Thursday to discuss a potential new deal, but no progress was made. Tennessee reportedly remained firm in their stance not to increase the compensation package. The situation reached a critical point when Nico skipped practice on Friday, which Coach Heupel later identified as the tipping point in the decision to move on. Before I get to everyone's reactions, I want to talk about each party's options of what to do at this point. With the spring transfer portal set to open this Wednesday, April 16th, Nico is expected to be among the most sought-after player available. He's already ranked as number one player in the 24/7 Sports Transfer Portal rankings. However, his options may be limited by SEC rules, which prohibit players from transferring to another conference school during the spring window if they want to maintain eligibility for the following season. This means if Nico wishes to play in 2025, he will likely need to look at schools in the Big Ten, ACC, or Big 12. Interestingly, Tennessee reported became aware that Nico's representatives had reached out to Oregon prior to the start of spring practice, though Oregon indicated they were not interested. For the Volunteers, they now find themselves in need of a new starting quarterback just months before the 2025 season. Currently, Tennessee has redshirt freshman Jake Merkinger and true freshman George McIntyre on the roster, both of whom participated in Saturday's spring game. However, the program may also explore transfer portal options to find a more experienced replacement. This situation represents what may consider the first high-profile holdout in college football's NIL era. As such, it may set important precedents for future NIL negotiations and player-program relationships across collegiate athletics. The resolution, Tennessee standing firm rather than acquiescing to increased compensation demands, could influence how similar situations are handled in the future. If this holdout ends poorly for Nico, it may deter other players from taking similar risks. Conversely, if he secures a better deal elsewhere, it could empower more players to negotiate more aggressively for higher compensation. Now, a lot of coaches, players, analysts, and NFL figures have weighed in on the implications of this landmark moment in collegiate athletics. We'll start with Josh Heupel. Heupel set the tone for the program's response, emphasizing institutional values over individual demands. After Nico skipped practice, Heupel stated, "No one is bigger than the program. That includes me too." He acknowledged the unfortunate nature of the situation but framed it as a necessary stand to preserve team culture. His refusal to renegotiate Nico's $2.4 million annual deal, despite the quarterback's request for $4 million, signaled a willingness to risk short-term competitiveness for long-term principles. Brian Kelly of LSU, he predicted that Nico's holdout would become a template for future disputes. This is the first version of correction, he says, suggesting the NIL market lacks standardized comps for positions to guide negotiations. Kelly implied that programs must adapt to an era where players increasingly leverage their value, even if this disrupts the game's dynamics. Mario Cristobal of Miami. Cristobal, whose program secured transfer quarterback Carson Beck on a $4.3 million NIL deal, issued a veiled warning about player accountability. While Miami has embraced high-profile transfers, Cristobal stressed that no one who thinks they are above the program would thrive under his leadership. His comments underscore the balancing act between NIL investments and maintaining discipline. For Lane Kiffin of Ole Miss, Kiffin, no stranger to controversial exits, reacted to the saga with a facepalming emoji on social media. His silence critique highlighted the absurdity of the situation while implicitly acknowledging the systematic flaws of NIL governance. Now on the analyst side, we're going to start with Joel Klatt. Klatt blamed the NCAA's pathetic and inept governance for enabling holdouts, arguing that no guardrails exist to regulate player movement or compensation. While critical of the NCAA, he defended Nico's right to seek better terms, stating, "You may not like what Nico is doing, but it certainly is his right." Robert Griffin III highlighted a double standard on how player and coach mobility is perceived. "If you are screaming that players should honor their contract, you better say the same for coaches who leave for more money," he wrote. His comparison drew attention to the hypocrisy of vilifying players while normalizing coach departures for lucrative contracts. Barrett Saleh of CBS Sports took a harsh stance against Nico's play, tweeting, "Tennessee is much better off without Nico." He implied that the quarterback's on-field performance of 2,600 passing yards and a loss to Ohio State in the college football playoff did not justify his financial demands. Now for some former and current NFL players. We'll start with Micah Parsons. Parsons lambasted the state of college football, calling it a joke and advocating for semi-professionalization. He argued that the lack of accountability in NIL deals fails kids by prioritizing money over character development. His critique reflected concerns that the collegiate model has abandoned its educational mission. Emmanuel Acko, former NFL linebacker, he's offered a nuanced take, acknowledging the fractured and decaying state of college football. While sympathizing with players' rights to capitalize on their value, his perspective bridged the gap between traditionalist and modern views, recognizing systematic failures without condemning individual agency. Now, an unnamed SEC official warned that Nico's case could inspire similar holdouts unless the NCAA implements revenue-sharing frameworks to standardize compensation. This sentiment aligns with Kelly's prediction that the market will self-correct through trial and error. Now, this Nico saga has exposed fissures in college football's evolving identity. Coaches like Hubel and Cristobal prioritize program stability, while players and agents push for market-driven compensation. Analysts and NFL figures, meanwhile, debate whether the sport's educational ethos can coexist with its professionalizing trends. As revenue-sharing models loom on the horizon, this incident may accelerate calls for collective bargaining or standardized NIL contracts. To prevent future conflicts like the Tennessee and Nico NIL dispute, the NCAA could implement structural reforms informed by recent legal developments and stakeholder feedback. One thing they could do is standardize revenue sharing and NIL integration. They can implement the proposed House vs. NCAA settlement framework, which allows schools to share up to $20.5 million annually, rising to $30 million by 2035, directly with athletes. This reduces reliance on volatile third-party NIL deals and creates a baseline compensation structure. For example, SEC schools like Tennessee could allocate 15 to 22% of athletic department revenues to athletes, with football and basketball players receiving the majority, 93% at Tennessee. They could have a capped third-party NIL deals, pair revenue sharing with limits on external NIL agreements to prevent bidding wars. For instance, cap individual NIL earnings at 150% of schools' revenue sharing allocation for their sport. Next, they should look into establishing a transparent NIL contract guidelines, have a pre-enrollment negotiation windows, formalize the NCAA's March 2025 policy allowing recruits to negotiate NIL terms before committing. Schools could disclose standard NIL packages during recruitment, akin to scholarship offers. They can model in contracts with performance clauses, develop NCAA-approved templates that tie NIL payments to academic progress, on-field performance, and roster retention. For example, a quarterback's deal could include bonuses for playoff appearances or degree completion. Next, they should look into reforming transfer portal rules. Financial penalties for NIL-driven transfers require receiving schools to compensate the original institution if a player transfers within 1 year of signing an NIL deal. For example, Oregon would pay Tennessee $1 million if they poach a Vols player with a $1 million NIL offer. Eligibility consequences: restrict immediate eligibility for transfers who break NIL contracts unless mutually released. This discourages holdouts and mid-cycle renegotiations. Next, they should enhance oversight in education. Centralize NIL registry. Create a public database, as mandated by the March 2025 settlement, where all NIL deals are logged, including terms and involved parties. This ensures transparency and eaters under the table offers. Have athlete financial literacy programs. Expand the NCAA's August 2024 reforms by requiring annual workshops on contract law, tax implications, and agent vetting. High-profile athletes like quarterbacks could receive mandatory agent representation. Then, they should have legal safeguards against antitrust challenges. Collective bargaining framework: follow Nick Saban's recommendation to treat revenue sharing as a non-employee compensation model, avoiding labor classification disputes. This would involve negotiating with athlete associations to set terms. And have a preemptive legislation. Lobby Congress to federalize NIL regulations, overriding conflicting state laws. The NCAA's current patchwork of states' rules creates loopholes, exploiting in cases like Tennessee versus NCAA. And finally, incentivize long-term commitments. Have multi-year NIL contracts. Allow schools to offer multi-year deals in exchange for athletes waiving transfer rights for specified periods. For example, a 3-year, $6 million contract with a buyout clause for early termination. And also have post-eligibility benefits. Expand the NCAA's 2024 health and academic guarantees to include post-college insurance policies or stipends for athletes who complete their degrees and contractual obligations. Now, I gave a lot of information here, and I want to go over one of the reactions to this. RG3s mentions how transferring from team to team should be the same for the players and coaches, saying, if you're screaming that players should honor their contract, you better say the same for coaches who leave for more money. And I get that completely. However, when schools that sign a coach from another school for more money, they do receive compensation. Signing another player from the transfer portal doesn't come with the compensation. And I have mixed feelings about this situation. On one hand, I don't like that this transfer portal, the way players can move around as they please, whether it's to get more money or to play on a better team. I believe you shouldn't be allowed to transfer until after being with the program for 3 years. Then they can transfer to wherever they are wanted. Also, there shouldn't be no reason for players to renegotiate for more money. If they agree to it, they need to be held accountable and honor their agreement that was made. I think if a player doesn't honor their agreement and doesn't show up for the practices and meetings, they should lose eligibility for that year and to earn NIL for the season. Again, that's just my opinion. Now, on the other hand, I do like this aspect of someone wanting to hold out for more money and players wanting to transfer to another school as often as they want. I like this because what this tells me is that when someone wants to transfer for more money, it tells me that they don't want to work for the money. They just want to go with the highest bidder, and it doesn't matter if they will compete to win or not. If they want to transfer because they want to win, that tells me that player doesn't want to work with the team and try to make them better. They'd rather abandon their brothers and take the easy route to help them win a championship. So to end this with this Nico situation, he was holding out for more money. Now, before I made this recording, I looked up his last game of the season when they played Ohio State, and he was horrible. Nico struggled significantly in Tennessee's 42-17 college football playoff loss to Ohio State. Facing relentless pressure from the Buckeyes defense, he completed 14 of 31 passes, that's 45.2%, for 104 yards, his lowest passing total of the season, with no touchdowns. And yes, this team was struggling. They were without their star running back, Dylan Sampson, who was the SEC Player of the Year, and wide receiver Squirrel White, who left early, reducing their offensive weapons. But if Nico were to put up video game-like numbers in that game and would have at least made it competitive, or better yet, if he was the reason that they were to be able to beat Ohio State, then I would understand why Nico would want to negotiate. But he played poor, despite having multiple rushing touchdowns, which occurred when they were down by 3 scores. He's in no position to ask for $4 million a year. He wasn't the best player on their team, and when he needed to show up, he didn't. Nico has shown that he only wants to play if he's paid, not to help his team compete for a championship. Anyways, that's it for this video. What do you think about this situation? Should Tennessee have paid Nico, or were they right to not pay him and let him walk? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more sports stories like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time in Overtime.